that there's definitely a marketing issue here.
And to be fair, it's sort of like shooting a cannon with a mouse to have the director of economic development be the marketing guy. Like, can we find someone more free time to do that?
Yeah.
Like,
Sean, not going to show up.
Yes. Do we have
Is he?
a quorum
Oh,
of
boy.
both committees?
that would be clucked up.
Your name tag?
No, I'm good.
Okay. I was gonna say I'd move it for you.
You're gonna start in a minute anyways.
There. Okay, I'm going to call to order a joint meeting of the Planning and Economic Development and Committee on Infrastructure on December 4th, 2018. It is 7:01, and I am going to ask Alderwoman Schmidt to call the roll, please.
Alderman Ernest Jettie. Here. Alderman David Tenza. Alderman Brandon Laws. Here. And myself, along with Alderwoman and Marianne Malizagoya. Also, the infrastructure, Alderman Michael O'Brien.
Present.
Alderman Tom Lopez. Here. I am here, Ernest Jettie.
Here.
And Ken Gidge is not available this evening.
And also in attendance, we have Mayor Donchis.
And Madam Chair, may I
Yes.
say that I did hear from Alderman Gidge. He is ill today, but he is properly excused. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And Alderman Wilshire is here. Sorry, you're sitting way over there in the blind spot. Thanks. Public comment, I see none. Discussion. Mayor Donchis is here to do a lands and buildings update, and this meeting was originally formed to talk about the use of the Court Street building. I know many of the people who are here this evening, as well as several other board members, were on the tour last March of the Court Street building. And after that tour, we had a conversation with Director Cummings and our downtown specialist at the time, Mr. Vale, about both committees' desires to be kept updated on what was going to happen in that building and the plans as they related to the economic development and impact on downtown. And we had some conversations at that time about that building being part of the whole neighborhood with Indian Head and the library and the VFW, as well as the public space that's there, looking at all of that. And then, of course, as we all know, there are many infrastructure issues around that building also. But the original purpose for this meeting was to look at the use of that building. Mayor Donchis this evening is going to speak to that, a bit of that, but also he's indicated that he wants to talk about some of the upgrades and repairs that are needed, as well as City Hall. So Mayor Donchis, I will turn it over to you. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for the invitation, the opportunity to come in and talk about the Court Street building. Now, as you know, this is in our history, a very significant building. It's the former Central Fire Station, which was used, and Alderman O'Brien can say, I don't know,
would say
almost
up till
100 years, right?
1971.
Yeah, I mean, it was built, it was used for a long, long time as a fire station. Then around 1971, when its use was discontinued, there was an attempt, and there was a renovation and expansion to make a children's museum and an art gallery, and that lasted for some period of time, but did not succeed. And over time, there have been various attempts to use the building on and off. Some when I was mayor before, and others since, and it's a long history. But in any event, up to several years ago, what we had there was a building that was in need of a lot of repair, which it still is, which was being used in a very limited fashion in parts of the building. We had the Peacock Players and the Theater Guild and other community theater groups using the Streeter Theater, the Janice Streeter Theater, and we have the Symphony and the Peacock Players office space there. But the bays of the fire station, the old bays, were filled up with, was basically a warehouse filled up with what were really obsolete theater seats and other junk, really. And so it seemed at that time that there was a significant opportunity to begin to activate that building. As you said, Madam Chair, a central location within a very significant downtown neighborhood. So within a couple of years ago, I would say, we moved the junk out of the bays and attempted to begin to find a use for the bays. And you may recall that one possibility was to try to use it as a music venue because there was some interest being expressed at the time by some local people here and somebody from Manchester who had some history operating a music venue to run a music venue there. But they could not, in the end, they decided not to proceed with that. Then we received a proposal from a local group to begin a nano brewery there, which the city, entered with a contract with the nano brewery called Liquid Therapy. We assigned community development block grant funds to make improvements to the air circulation. They agreed to invest considerable money in the space. And in order to activate that area of the building, we went forward with that and entered an agreement with them. And actually, I believe they're open right this second, but they're within the last couple of days, but their formal opening, I believe, is tomorrow. So from what we understand, and at least we've talked to the R.J. Finley Company and others around the neighborhood, they're very excited about that because now, instead of kind of a dead space, they have an operating business which may bring more people in and just help the entire neighborhood. But still, there's a lot of space in the building that could be used more effectively than it is. The next thing that happened was that Alderman Gidge came in, and a very committed artist, and made a passionate plea that Tim Cummings, the Economic Development Director, and I should go down with him to visit the Western Avenue Studios in Lowell. And when we went down, he was right. It was an incredibly interesting mill building, former mill building that had been renovated into up around 300 artist studios, very small spaces on 3 or 4 different floors. And in addition to that, a loft building where artists' lofts were, where artists live and show their work in larger residential / studio spaces. But it's very easy to tour the building that is the studios only, and it was, I'd say, very inspiring. My wife and I went back after that, and Alderman Gidge began to advocate that we use almost this basement section of the building, which is off the courtyard, the grass courtyard to kind of the southeast of the building, that what seemed like a basically unusable basement space, that we activate that to be artist studios. In a similar fashion, and much smaller fashion, but a similar fashion than we had seen at the Western Avenue Studios. And over a period of time, a proposal was developed to divide that into 9 smaller studios and then lease those to active artists. And we, working with Alderman Gidge on the design, we came forward with a proposal that was approved, the funds that were necessary to do that were approved by the Finance Committee, and that project is underway now. Again, to activate a very, what seemed like, space that would never be used. Again, that's underway, and we're expected to finish that in the next couple of months, and that will then be rented at least to 9 different artists, and we're working with the National Artists Association to help recruit and manage that space, and so we think we can do a good job in filling that space with 9 artists. And as you know, I'm sure as you know, Madam Chair and members of the committee, that one of the advanced, sort of the vanguard of downtown revitalization is often artists who locate downtown and begin to attract other people who create economic activity and growth and interest, helping to spur urban downtown revitalization. So that was the next thing that happened, and that, as I say, is underway. But as we began to look at the building, especially in the context of that, there are some significant problems I think came to light. First of all, only part of the building has sprinklers, and that includes the old fire station, the bays, and the area of basement that I'm talking about, but not the area that was added in the early 70s. The entire Streeter Theater, there's a lower theater, and the lobby area and some of the offices have no sprinklers at all. And as we were kind of looking at these different spaces and just to kind of scope them out with Bill McKinney, he commented, and when he said it, it certainly gave me pause, that we were operating this theater over there with a capacity of 299, kids, families, parents in there all the time with these kind of, with these wooden risers with seats on them, and it's not sprinklered. And what if there were ever a fire in there? And when he said that, I thought, he's right. How this has gone on for so many years, decades really, without even being sprinkled. I expected that the cost would be, enormous, and that must have been the reason it was never done. But as we checked it out more thoroughly, and the first idea was, well, just to do this, there's a theater, the Streeter Theater, and then there's a little theater down below that is not approved for occupancy because it has no sprinklers. And of course, the lobby area. And so the idea first was, well, maybe we just do at least make the theater safe, fire safe, and maybe the small theater below. But as Bill and Jay Honeywell began to investigate that possibility, it turns out that the connection to the existing system, sprinkler system, water system, is really kind of on the west side of the building. So you need to really, in order to cover the theater, you really need to extend the water system from the lobby into the theater. So really, if you're going to do this, you have to do the remainder of the building. To me, as just a matter of safety, fire department will be much more satisfied with what we're doing over there if we make this fire safe in that fashion. So to me, just as a safety measure, without even thinking what else we might do, we really should move forward and provide sprinklers for the rest of the building. And so what you see in front of you is an estimate for that system, which is in the range of $60,000 to $100,000. Now, the funds for this, we have a city, like a savings account for improvements or adjustments to city buildings. And in that account, we have, and we save money, we usually dedicate money to it in every budget. We currently have $474,000. So we clearly have enough to be able to provide sprinklers in the Court Street building, because, again, I suspect you all agree, but if there were ever a fire there and something happened and we had decided not to go forward, I think we would definitely regret it. So Bill and Jay make the point, okay, well, if you're in there doing the sprinklers, you really should replace the ceiling, the hung ceiling, because it is completely obsolete, doesn't work very well. So we got an estimate for that. And in addition, they say while you're doing that, the lighting is also old and obsolete and inefficient, so you should replace the lighting at the same time. So were we to, and that's mostly in the lobby area, so were we to sprinkle the building, replace the ceilings, and do the lighting in the lobby, the total cost is estimated to be between, and we'd have to go out for bid on all this, between $78,000 and $125,000. So let's say around $100,000. Again, most of the cost is for providing the water system and the sprinklers, and that is a safety item. So to me, that is something we should do as quickly as possible, and as a safety measure. Now, once that is done, it does open the building to greater use than we have now. The capacity on the theater is rated at 299 for the Streeter Theater. I think the fire department would probably up that with sprinklers, but it would also at least open the lower theater to be used, and of course would mean that we're already using the lobby, but we could consider other uses for the building that we don't have now and that we could not we could not do now because of the lack of fire safety. So to me, that is something we need to do right away, and that is one part of the project. Beyond that, I mean, I think we should discuss how the building, is used. I think it depends what opportunities we have what opportunities are there for us. In talking about the lower theater, I mentioned to Mark Thayer, who is the director of the symphony, that used to be a movie theater. In fact, I remember going there, believe it or not, to see a movie the day my daughter was born. Now, it's not as bad as it sounds, because she was born at 12:30 a.m. So, she's born, I'm over at the hospital for a while. I go back for the day, but, by 6 or 7 o'clock at night, my wife and daughter are pretty tired. They want to go to sleep, so I went to the movie.
Honeymoon's over.
The honeymoon's over. So I went to that theater that night, and I think I saw, I think it was Peter Weir, the one about, I can't think of the title, but it takes place in Australia. Huge rain. I'll think of the title, or I'll get it to you later. In any event, I said to Mark, well, look, what do you think? Could we use that for something like that? And would you be interested in helping to operate it? And he said, yeah, maybe. I mean, he's a very creative, energetic person, and he seemed interested, but nothing definite or nothing concrete. And it's not a tremendous space. It's not a tremendous theater. It's tiered. But it probably could comfortably hold 30 or 40 people. And maybe we work with a symphony on something to kind of do some kind of maybe smaller music events, or we have to look at the acoustics, maybe some movies, whatever. But
If I could interrupt
Yeah.
you, I think most of us were in there on the tour.
Yes.
And so we basically covered that building top to bottom, every corner. And so some of you, I think, remember it. And we all thought it was a very nice, intimate sort of space that could be used in a variety of ways.
Right. So that would be something to think about. Maybe we begin to talk to the symphony about how maybe it could best be used.
And I would just also, as I'm listening to you, think that with the Nano Brewery in there, they may even want to sponsor some music. And since they're co-located, it might be something to look at with them also in terms of a variety of uses. Alderman Laws.
I'm sorry for interrupting, Mayor. Well, I just want to point out that Tim Cummings and I are trying to get the front conference room turned into a music practice studio for bands. So we're looking at that as well.
So that's another possibility. And I think the idea there is to let a band go in and rehearse and see if it bothers people, and if not,
We'll
why not?
continue.
Exactly what it is.
Alderman Lopez?
I was just going to ask, and I don't want this to be misconstrued because they're entirely different populations and purposes, but how does it compare to the size of does anyone know the occupancy of the theater in the library?
It's about
Um,
75.
I'm sorry?
It's about 75 in the library is what they say.
Okay, I thought it was 100, but.
They have a
it's
pretty
in
successful
there.
movie program as well, but it's not, it's the library, so it's always family friendly and it's a specific type of use. So there's definitely some versatility there, and the population that would go to it is fairly proven.
And I would just follow up on that, Alderman Lopez, when we did the tour, Director McCormick from the library was part of that tour, and I know she was looking forward to just being able to do family-friendly programming related to maybe things going on at the brewery, and just looking at that Nano Brewery as being a place where people might come with their kids and play games and maybe do things outside, and she could also do things at the library that would dovetail into other events in that building.
So the next thing I think we think about, I think we should again go forward with the sprinkling, but then once that's completed, the symphony and the Peacock players specifically, and the theater groups would like us to upgrade the carpeting, make the lobby look more presentable. The carpet is probably decades old, but I think the idea is to get the new ceiling in, kind of evaluate the situation, and then consider moving forward with carpet. So that, and then longer term, we really have to, the next thing we really got to do, but there's not sufficient money in the city buildings account to accomplish this. But the next thing we got to do at some point is fix the roof there. That is around a $500,000 project. And the roof is in sad shape. It leaks from time to time. There have been numerous repairs. Sometimes shingles blow off. It really needs repair, but it's more than we have the money for right now. So certainly going forward, that is another thing we need to accomplish to secure the use of the building. In that area, the only other thing I have to mention now is that, as you remember, the space between the library and the Court Street Theater is kind of a problem space. There's been some bad behavior in there. The sidewalk is blocked off and all of that. So in the last series of escrows, we allocated funds to first take a look, get a landscape architect to take a look at that area in terms of providing ideas as to how it could be changed to improve public use and to improve its appearance, to draw people into the space. Ms. Marchand is here, and I think when she gets to it, we have an RFP when she finishes, we have an RFP, request for proposal on the way in terms of securing the architect. And then there are funds, at least some funds, allocated in the escrows to improve that area once we look at what is best to do with it. Once we get some ideas as to how it best can be changed and used. And of course, we'd want to work with your two committees, and the library is also involved there and very interested. It's kind of unclear if it's city space or library space, but I've visited the library board, and they're very interested in working with us on this. So I think we can do something good there over time. Moving beyond the Court Street building, since we're on the issue of the city buildings and the city building account, we need to make some improvements at the Arlington Street Community Center. Now, that is going extremely well. Many, many people are involved. A lot of families are participating there. And the director of the Arlington Street Community Center, Megan Karen, just started Monday. But they need air conditioning, basically, and HVAC. They don't have any air conditioning there, so it's very oppressive in the hot weather, and they need I think it's an electrical box to enable air conditioning. They need the air conditioning and some improvement in the HVAC system. And as you can see, the estimate there runs from around $20,000 to $50,000. So we should put that out to bid and make those improvements so that that space can be used even more effectively. And you see the proposed work and the estimates for the costs on the sheet in front of you. And finally, another thing I think we need to do right away is the door in the front of City Hall is no longer really operating properly, and it is not really even safe. Sometimes it doesn't lock properly. The frame of the door is coming away from the brick, and we don't even have a key system to go into the front of the building, meaning like now, it's locked, and even though that's the entrance to City Hall, no member of the public can come in here now. They have to go to the back, and it just seems like we should make it safe. We should have a key system there. And so just looking at some of the possible, there's the possible configurations that new doors that we could have in that space. At least as we looked at it, we were looking at two that I've attached to the cost sheet that I gave you. There's one where you see on the upper picture, there's some double wooden doors. We could do something like that. We were thinking maybe double doors would work better, a little more welcoming than what we have now. And another idea would be double doors. Another kind of look would be on the second sheet. There's a City Hall, two double doors. That's City Hall at some city of Tampa, I guess. That is another type of door that we could have, but we do need to replace the doors. I think we need to make the building more accessible and friendly, and also we need to secure the front so when it is locked, it actually is locked. The cost for the doors is $20,000 to $25,000. The other item in City Hall that really needs to be done is the air conditioning in the IT server room is really in bad shape. And the problem there is that if that goes down and it gets too hot in the server room, it could actually disable the entire city's computer system. Mm-hmm. So that should be replaced as a preventative measure, and the cost there is in the range of $40,000 to $50,000. So those are the projects that we're thinking should go forward in the short term as far as city buildings, the Court Street and then these other two city buildings. Those are
Alderman Lopez had his hand up, and then I'd like to make a comment. Oh, and Alderman O'Brien. Alderman Lopez?
So first of all those keys to the city you're telling us don't work. That's just disappointing. But I did want to point out, when we design the door, or if we are looking at replacing the door, it's sort of a pie in the sky dream, but we had talked about making the front of City Hall accessible at some future date. So while that's probably a much bigger project than we have the scope for, could we keep in mind the design of the door should be at least amenable to that? So we have one less thing to fix?
Yes.
Alderman O'Brien, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Mayor, can we step back to the Court Street building? As you know, as mentioned, my former career being on the fire department, the city has a responsibility when it comes to fire safety to take the lead, and I'm glad to see that you're prioritizing the sprinkler system. You know, that's something, I think I know what happened in 1972. The Boca Code was a lot different than what it is in 2018, and we've gone through, I think, 46 years since the conception of that building, and it's time to bring it up to modern code. So that goes hand in mouth, and I would prioritize that. But I do find interesting what you said. I agree with you. When you do the sprinkler, do the ceilings. But then in the other statement, you said the roof leaks.
Yeah.
And then I got to
A free
thinking, when you're
sprinkler.
doing ceilings, you don't want, you want to stop all the water. So I would like to see if you could have Jay prioritize, and I would hate to see new ceilings in an area that may be in jeopardy of any further type of
Roof leaks
damage
from
there.
time to time, but it gets fixed. But
Yeah.
so it's not leaking this moment, but still, the roof needs to be replaced. It's just at a cost of more money than we have right now.
Yeah, and if I can jump ahead to the Arlington Street, yes, I mean, I was very impressed. I was there when we had the new director coming in, and it was good to see, and did a wonderful job. I was captain of the old fire station there and used to traverse over there, so I really liked the upgrades. But I asked a question, again, taking the lead in fire safety, what is the fire protection in there? And I would like to see that evaluated as well, too, because where there is children and after-school programs, and take just a peek, see at that, and to make sure we're all set. And then third, final, if I may say, the postcard that you see on anything with the city, and particularly City Hall, is the front door.
Right.
That's the one that gets open to us
Right.
in the city. But I would prioritize saving the computer system first. I mean, we got to fix
Nobody
the
can find
AC.
the front door.
That's where we generate all our work and everything. But let's face it, how many political campaigns or presidents and other different things that the front steps of City Hall have hosted? And I think we should have a door that means welcoming and clearly designate the successfulness of our community and our city. So I agree with you there. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. And Alderman O'Brien, I'm sure all of these are going to be coming to your committee.
There you go.
So, I would just agree with Alderman O'Brien. As I was listening to the comment about the roof, I was thinking, ew, we don't want to put in a new ceiling and then discover we have a leak because it's leaking through our new ceiling. So we do need to look at that. But I know when we toured that building, there were conversations about sprinkler systems and looking at some of those spaces and where there are even two means of egress. And that small theater, I remember we were kind of looking around like, where does this door go? If you went out, could you easily get out? So I think all of those things certainly play into the future uses for that building. In terms of what we're looking at right now, the 9 smaller studios, I just want to make sure I understood you correctly. The Nashua Area Artists Association is going to be managing that. That's the plan?
Well, they at least will be helping to recruit and kind of oversee the space. Probably the leases will be negotiated and taken care of, the day-to-day stuff maybe by Amy, who works over at the Hunt Building.
Okay. And then just in terms of, again, looking at that part of the city, one thing that is going in there, I don't know if all of you caught this or not, but the National Regional Planning Commission is going to be moving into 30 Temple, which is going to be bringing some more people into that area as well, not only the employees, but also people who come for meetings and come to visit their offices. So that's going to add hopefully a little more foot traffic in the area and people in the city on a daily basis. But I do think that looking at that green space is really important, because when we think of the city and green spaces, we've got all of our parks in the outer areas of the city. And when we think of downtown, we think of Greeley Park. But that space between the Court Street building and the library, I think all of us know, is highly utilized. As you indicated, sometimes the utilization isn't what we would actually like to see going on there. But with concerts and movies and festivals, and then just people coming from the library, taking their kids outside, letting them run around, going back into the library. It's very much the green space for kind of the heart of downtown. And so I'm glad to hear we're looking at that and looking at how all of that works as an integrated neighborhood, almost downtown and off of Main Street. So thank you. Alderman Lopez.
I was kind of impressed by the estimates that I see, because I remember from the performing arts study, feasibility study, the estimates that we were being given for what it would take to bring Court Street back up to its potential was something like $3 million to $7 million, depending on which estimate of the week they were presenting. So I want to recognize the effort that's been put into systematically approaching that. It was an issue that I was particularly focused on when we were talking about the Performing Arts Center, because the Performing Arts Center is not a community theater. It's not a community arts center. It's a economic anchor. It's a large scale event center. And it's very important for us to have a variety of smaller scale venues for our community groups to perform in. It gives us the opportunity to cultivate and nurture the arts within younger people, who will ultimately become the consumers of the more large scale art. And it will serve our city well to make sure we're supporting local artists on the small scale. So being able to do that in such a cost-effective and efficient manner, I think is something we should just stop and acknowledge. Focusing on the fire safety and all that stuff is very important, especially if you bring artists in. There's a lot of different flammable stuff that they might be using, like oil paints. There is the brewery. So the mixed use of the building does increase the potential risk. I think the sprinklers and the upgrading so that we can actually use all the theaters is money that we should have been doing all along. So if we have it in the reserve, it's something that is more, it's more than time to do it and do it right. So I'm definitely in favor of that. And then with regards to the space use, I think of Greeley Park when I think of downtown's green space. I think of Main Street Methodist. I would like to see work being done on that campus and in that area, but I would also really like to see the American Legion come back to life, the Indian Head Bank be restored to its former glory. I would like to see that neighborhood get the attention that it deserves, and I think on a much smaller scale, improving Court Street Theater could be a very hyper-local anchor for allowing all that to happen, where the library has been the nexus of community gathering for years. They've held the fort, but they could really build some synergy with Court Street if we give it the resources that it needs.
Yeah, and I would just add, in terms of looking at that neighborhood, we tend to look to the west and Main Street and north and south, but also looking to the east. You only go a couple of blocks and the senior center is there. And so integrating all of that and St. Casimir's Place, I mean, there's a lot of potential there, and the opportunity for connections beyond connecting that space with Main Street. So I'm happy to hear we're starting to look at the green space issue, and certainly we've got the Riverwalk and we're looking at the riverfront development. So bringing all of that together, I think, is very important. Does anyone else have questions, comments? I'm sorry, Alderman Jettie, Alderman Kelly, and Alderman Tenza, did I see your hand up? Okay, Alderman Jettie.
So I think that, looking at all of these things individually, they all seem to have great merit. It's kind of petty, but the City Hall door issue doesn't strike me as that important. If people being able to access the building after hours through a key system there, I'm not sure I understand why that would be important, why they can't use the back door as we've been doing, but that's a petty thing. Um, I'm more interested in, the idea that, when you take, little projects one by one, you can see the value of making improvements, of doing, like these three examples are good individually, but don't we have are we the long-range planning committee, or is there a capital improvements committee that prioritizes how we spend the city's money on various projects, and how does that fit, how does these things fit into that plan?
If these were to go to capital improvements, then they would be part of that ranking system. I don't believe any of these have been submitted, have they?
Well, these won't go to capital improvements
improvements,
because
yeah.
the money is budgeted for this. And in the sense of, it's been assigned to the city building committee, and the city building fund, it has been saved into the city building fund. So, what needs to happen here is we need to execute a contract that would be approved by the finance committee, and I basically get the lands and buildings committee to sign off on it. As far as the front door goes, the aesthetics is kind of a side benefit. The real underlying cause is that the door doesn't fully lock all the time. So there are times when you're able to pull the door open even though it locks. So we have the double problem of it not being accessible when it should be at times, or when it could be, when the city hall is really open, but probably more importantly is it is accessible and openable at times when it's, we don't want people coming in. So that was what really drove it, that the lock is really not working properly, and the door is, about 80 years old.
So it's a safety issue more than
Yeah.
an aesthetics issue. Alderwoman Kelly and then Alderman Lopez.
Thank you. I have a comment and a question. So, comment is that my office is right in front of Court Street, so it's really nice to see it come alive again. The brewery, I think, just opened this week, and I think that these improvements will be really crucial for the symphony and the Peacock Players. So, I'm happy to see that, and it lets me brag a little bit about where my business is, so appreciate that. I did have a question, and maybe Alderman O'Brien would be the best to answer, but I was just wondering how we've approached fire safety in the past as, buildings are grandfathered in. Like, how do we decide, oh, well, that one needs to be looked at?
The traditional, I should refer it more clarity to the fire marshals, but allow me to take an unofficial stab at it. Basically, what is grandfathering is anything that was built under a current existing building plan. But from time to time, buildings get remodeled, and then a building plan is sought, and when that new building permit is sought to do the construction, that building gets reevaluated, and at that particular time, then it has to, or may have to meet the upgrades that have been brought forward in the code.
Great. Thank you.
But just to be maybe a little more specific about Bill McKinney's comment, his real comment, the gory details were, there have been two buildings, this is Bill talking, that have made me lose sleep. Number one, Franklin Street, before Brady Sullivan came in to do the conversion. And actually, I've noticed that there are people moving in there, so that's good.
Mhm.
But even though the city didn't own it, there were people moving in and living there and getting in, and he was just afraid there'd be some disaster over there. Number two, the Court Street Theater. The Streeter Theater, because there's hundreds of people going in there, and there's no fire suppression system. And he says, that building causes me to lose sleep. And as soon as he said that, I thought, we've got to let Bill McKinney sleep at night. So
Yes. We would agree. We would agree. Any other questions? Oh, Alderman Lopez and then Alderman Tenza.
Yeah, I just want to observe that
I'm sorry.
petty may not be exactly the word. The aesthetics of replacing the front door is probably petty. Like, what's our door going to look like? Which model are we going to use? But having an unsecure city hall at night is not a small concern. There are people in front of city hall very late at night. Some might even be there overnight. And having an unsecure city hall is a problem. And secondly, if it's coming loose from the frame, I don't want to be looking at something as petty if the door starts to fall on someone. I think it's very important that we make sure that if we don't look at the aesthetics of it and we don't redesign the door to look like Miami's, that's fine. But I think we should make sure that we do put the money into making sure the door is safe and can be secured. And then I guess on behalf of people who use the Main Street side and don't really go around the back and might be registering their car or any other number of things where they don't really want to walk through the entire city hall to get to it, it makes a difference. Like, maybe they're out for a stroll, or maybe they're walking, or maybe they just parked in some of the spaces out front. And getting all the way up the almost rocky level stairs and then finding the door locked is not petty to that person. So I agree in terms of the aesthetics. Like, picking the nice looking door is a minor concern and not as important as the sprinklers. But I do think we need to address at least the structural operation of the door.
Just to be clear on the door, I mean, it usually is lockable and it usually is secure, but there are times when it is not. So, it just doesn't work 100% of the time.
Right. I had Alderman Tenza, Alderman O'Brien, and then Alderman Jettie.
Thank you. From what we've heard with the Performing Arts Center, people are very concerned about fire safety in the theater. So I would hope that we can move forward on that project as quickly as possible. That's it is a great resource and will be a great resource in the future for community groups. And then one of the things, I hope that the carpets can get done too, because that's aesthetically needs to be done, but also just that it's a fresh coat of paint would be nice. Wouldn't cost a whole lot down there, I don't think, but may make a big improvement to the inside. So thank you for bringing these things forward.
Alderman O'Brien and then Alderman
Thank you.
Jettie.
My comment will be maybe to help some of the aldermen who may not completely understand, but being on the infrastructure committee, it's more a brick and mortar type of committee where we're in charge of all municipal buildings, not so much the school departments, but the buildings that the municipality owns. They need a new roof, they need a paint job, they need this. It comes to the committee, we make the recommendations. Now, when it gets to the funding, that goes to another committee and then to finance, and it gets basically approved and done there. But it usually comes to infrastructure to prove that the proposed project is within, something that needs to be done. And so as far as I think it's chapter 45 in the charter or something like that, but that gives the strength to the infrastructure committee to have that to be heard in this particular committee.
Alderman Jettie.
I just wanted to reply to Alderman Lopez. I misunderstood. I thought the mayor was saying that the door could not be keyed at night, so that I thought he was talking about employees or other authorized people gaining access to the front door as opposed to having to use the back door. I thought that might be petty. I didn't know that the door didn't lock at all. And if that's the
Certainly
case,
understandable if someone's saying, oh, I want to use that door. Let's make sure that door costs $40,000 to fix. I can agree with you on that.
Well, what I was really just saying is sometimes it doesn't lock, and since we're doing the door anyway, we might as well make it a key access, just like every other, and that doesn't add, much to the, if we're going to do the door, that's a minor part of it.
Right. Any other comments, questions? Alderman O'Brien, anything?
I'm fine, thank you.
Do you have a motion? Oh, other public comment? Seeing none. Remarks by Alderman? Do you have a motion?
So am I excused?
Not till we get a motion to adjourn. Alderman O'Brien.
Madam Chair, may I make a motion to adjourn both committees at this time?
Yes.
And leave it open to your next committee.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, opposed, and we are adjourned at 7:49. And we will take a few minutes of break, and PEDC will convene. And we have 18019 Land Use Code by adding provisions regarding urban chickens on our agenda this evening. Thank you. Do you want to turn this off? Turn these. Let's start PEDC so Director Marchant can go home this evening. No.
Nights lately.
Good night. Okay, I am going to call to order a meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee at 7:56 in the Aldermanic Chamber, and if the clerk would call the roll, please.
Certainly. Alderwoman Mary Ann Malisi Goya,
Present?
Alderman Ernest Jettie,
Here.
Alderman David Tenza, Alderman Laws,
Here.
and Jan Schmidt. Also in attendance, we have President Wilshire, and we have Alderwoman Kelly.
And we have Director Marchant.
Lopez,
Oh, and Alderman Lopez.
who was not
You're here
currently
so
coughing loud
often,
enough.
I feel like you're part of the
Well, I'm in a
committee.
particularly foul mood tonight.
Okay, so, public comment, I see none. Communications, we have none. Unfinished business, none. New business, we have none. Tabled in committee, we have ordinance 18019, amending the land use code by adding provisions regarding urban chickens. And do I have a motion by a member to take it from the table?
Also moved.
Okay, motion by Alderman Schmidt to take from the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And so do I now have a motion by an alderman, member of the committee, to recommend final passage?
I'll recommend final passage on this.
So the motion by Alderman Schmidt is to recommend final passage. And we have Alderwoman Kelly with us and Director Marchant. Director Marchant, if you would like to join us, please. And I believe there is an updated version of the ordinance that Alderman Kelly would like to distribute to the committee. And,
Yeah, just so you guys know, it was, what you had was the older version, so I'll pass it out now so you
Right.
have it for the
That's
discussion.
fine, thank you.
Could I ask, is this the same that's online, on the agenda? Attached to the agenda online is proposed amendments from PEDC meeting of 9/18/2018. Is that?
And Director Marchant?
This is an updated version with revisions from public health
Thank
and
you.
legal. And so if you flip through the brightly colored sections on pages 3 and 4, you'll see the revisions.
Director Marchant, you don't have a mouse, do you? Do you-
No. There is a PDF open in the bottom. If you click that, I can come get it.
No, that's fine.
We might need to just move it around a little, but it's just one PDF
Oh,
file.
okay, I wasn't sure if there was more. Oh, we need to move that flag.
Oh.
Alderman Tenza, may I ask you to help me move that, please? Okay, thank you. Yeah, and we'll put it back. Must have gotten moved forward there. Is that good?
Mhm.
Okay, so Alderwoman Kelly, would you or Director Marchant like to start and lead us in the changes that we're looking at?
I can quickly start, and then I'll pass it over to Director Marchant.
Great, thank you.
So last time this was in committee, I know that Alderman Jettie wanted to see some of this back end of this, the health code updated, because it was a little bit out of date. So we went through and did that. You'll see there's some very specific language about what happens when a chicken gets seized. And I would like everyone to know that I've already gotten my chicken leash, so there's something about
Right.
chicken leashes in there. So that has been what has changed, and I know that Director Marchant would like to talk about the maps that she put together.
Okay. So Director
Thank you.
Marchant, please.
There was a discussion at the last meeting about limiting lot size. I do have some paper copies because I know that's hard to see. The map shows the pink I just want to make sure. Yep. So the pink lots are equal to or greater than a quarter acre, and the blue lots are equal to a half acre, or between a quarter acre and a half acre in size. And if you scroll down just a little bit, what you'll see is that by going to the quarter acre size, you essentially eliminate any chickens in the downtown. Yeah, that's plenty. Thank you. You can see, I mean, there's Canal Street, East Hollis, West Hollis. So all of the downtown area is eliminated from being allowed to have chickens if we go to quarter acre or half acre lots. What this doesn't show is the lots that are larger than 1 acre, that are larger than, 1 acre in size. Those are all on the periphery. None of those would be in the downtown portion of the city. And again, I can pass out a couple paper copies if that's helpful. But we just wanted some point of reference, I think, to discuss what a quarter acre, where our quarter acre lots were, where the half acre lots were, and then the smaller lots are in our downtown, more urbanized zoning, the RC, RB, RA areas.
And once again, the purple is?
A quarter acre.
Okay.
Is at least a quarter acre in size, from a quarter acre to a half acre, and the blue is from half acre to an acre.
And as a point of clarification, currently we do not have any acreage restrictions, just a restriction on how many feet per chicken you need.
Can I get one of those maps?
Any,
Great.
ooh,
Finally, someone gave me something large print.
thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Alderman Jettie?
So could you clarify again, what is this showing us? This, again, this is showing us, I know you said quarter and one color is half, but what?
Yep, so the green, purple, it's purple on yours. We had to change the colors so they'd show up better for you. The purple is a quarter acre to a half acre in size. So a minimum of a quarter acre and larger up to a half acre. The blue is a half acre to an acre.
So are these, if I may?
Yeah, and just to kind of finish that, those that are not colored are less than a quarter acre.
On the interior
On
of the
the
city.
interior,
And now,
okay.
of course, now you see anything close to the downtown and the interior of the city, the area in the northeast side that we're looking at now, those are all excluded due to too small of size. The areas on the furthest outside of the city, it doesn't show up on here well. Those are R30 and R40. So they are automatically allowed in those areas already without any restriction. So this only shows you these are all the new zones that are being proposed to allow chickens in that show a quarter acre or half acre larger lots. So anywhere that is empty in the middle would not allow any chickens.
So not in the cemetery?
Correct.
Wouldn't allow chickens if we did this.
If you had an acreage restriction of less than a quarter acre or half acre.
So again, Madam Chair.
Yes, I'm
if I
sorry,
could-
Alderman Jettie.
So is this what is being proposed, or is this the result of some amendment that you're thinking might be proposed?
Alderman Kelly?
Yeah,
Or
if I could speak to
Alderwoman
that. The
Kelly, yes.
conversation we had last time, the discussion was brought up, well, what if we do a half acre or a quarter acre? And Director Marchand and I said, what we'd love to do is show you what that would do. It's a lot more impressive to see it on there than to just say, oh, just quarter acre lots or just half acre lots, and how many people it would exclude or include doing that. So this was purely an exercise to show if we did that, how it would affect how many people would be able to have chickens in the city.
Okay, so this is not what the resolution or the ordinance that we're looking at is not represented here. You're just showing us that if we imposed a a restriction, an area restriction, to make it at least a quarter acre, that this is what the result would be. Is that right?
Correct. Or even half. Yep.
And if I could ask another,
Yes,
so
please,
the
Alderman
colored things is that the size of the lots that are there, or is that the size of the lots that those zones permit?
That is the size of the lots as they exist, not
they
about
exist.
the zoning.
Okay.
And I just want to point one thing out in terms of the language of the existing ordinance. If you go to what is page 2 and look at C3, chickens shall be accessory to and on the premises of a single family or two-family detached dwelling. So in the central part of the city where we may have lots that are less than a quarter of an acre, I think the other part of that is that we also have dwellings that often have more than two families in them. So
Right.
they would be excluded from having chickens also. So as you think about some of our downtown, more densely populated neighborhoods, the lot size is kind of not even in question because they have more than two dwellings within the building, so they wouldn't be allowed. Am I correct in?
So you can either have a chicken or a second dwelling.
That's right, or a third dwelling, right. You can have two dwellings and chickens, but not a third dwelling. Alderman Jettie, or Tenza, I'm sorry.
That happens, seems to be happening a lot to me.
Both
It's okay,
layers.
I take it as a compliment.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense of how many households it would affect if there are no limitations on the lot size, just single-family houses? And then how many houses, what would we be expanding this to if it was just the half acre? And what would we be expanding it to if it's the quarter acre?
I had those numbers last time. I don't know that I still have them. It was about, I don't want to misquote. I would be happy to email it afterwards. I think it was about 18,000 with no limit. And I think it was down to like 1,800. It was like 10%. Yeah.
With a half acre?
I think that was with a half acre, yeah.
And does that include the people who can already, all the lots that can? People who
No,
can-
that was only using the lots in the new proposed districts. It was not including the R30, R40 districts.
Yeah, we haven't really even looked at them because this wouldn't touch them at all.
But I can get you the actual numbers.
In
No, it's
those,
pretty close.
yeah, now that you say that, that it vaguely sounds familiar.
I think that was about what it was.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions? Alderman Jettie.
So just about this map, or?
If there's anything else about this, we can always come back to other things as we go along, but if not about the map, then anything else, there are changes that are highlighted in red in here, please.
So,
Yes, please, Alderman Jettie.
so on page 4, so paragraph 4 at the top talks about, this is the point that I raised at the last meeting about the previous proposed ordinance talked about keeping and housing animals. The current, I noticed that the current ordinance seemed
Bless you.
to eliminate, I talked about, cats and dogs that live in the house with you. This seemed to be something that was overlooked with that. And so what this proposal is, what's in red here is the change that Attorney Leonard from the legal department and Heidi Peak, from the health department, came up with to try to answer the issue that I raised. So that they now propose that it would read, "It shall be unlawful for any person, whether as owner, keeper, or custodian, to keep and house any animal in an accessory structure in any unsanitary manner that presents an imminent hazard to public health as determined by the health officer or designee." And so when Attorney Leonard sent that to me, I said, well, what about the main dwelling? Is there anything that prevents someone from having, chickens or goats or dogs or cats or anything else in the main dwelling? And she said that she didn't understand that was the issue that I was raising, and she would talk to Heidi Peak again and get back to me. I think she said she would get back to me, and I never followed up with her. I apologize. I haven't followed up with her, and she hasn't contacted me. But I would like, as we're doing this, that we would, instead of saying to keep and house any animal in an accessory structure, that we would say that to keep and house any animal in any structure in an unsanitary manner that presents an imminent hazard to public health as determined by the health officer or designee. Otherwise, I'm not sure that, I'm not saying that, I don't know if there's some other law that prohibits people from having chickens and
Monkeys.
other
Director
types of
Marchant?
animals in the main house or not.
I think Director Marchant would like to respond.
I think the intent is very good of your suggestion, but I would definitely ask for legal advice beforehand, because I do believe that there are other ordinances that deal with the interior of the house that the health officer already has jurisdiction over. And I think that we might be stepping on other ordinances unintentionally by making a change just here tonight. So if that is the purview, certainly, but just I think it would be smart to run it by legal first to make sure we're not harming other ordinances.
I agree with you, and I apologize for not, following up with her on that. And she said the same thing, that she was going to look into it and get back to me, but she hasn't, and I know everybody's busy. And I don't fault her for that. I fault myself for not pressing before tonight's meeting.
I know that we deal with situations with code that we bring the health officer in when there's unsanitary conditions. Code doesn't necessarily have jurisdiction if it's not a rental property. If it's a single-family home, there are different state RSAs that govern it, and the health officer has jurisdiction over unsanitary conditions, and we can do something about it when it happens, whether it's related to animals or hoarding or other situations. But it's certainly worth looking into further.
Alderman Lopez and then Alderwoman Kelly.
With the understanding that I'm talking to a lawyer who probably knows better, I'd be a little reluctant to add something so sweeping. While I understand that your intent is to be as thorough and detailed as possible in making sure that this is well written, I mean, it is the intent of this ordinance is really to make sure that the chicken dwelling and the chicken coop is being taken care of. Expanding that to include other animals is a step that seems reasonable, but focusing on the accessory dwelling seems to be the point, because I wouldn't want to invite public concern that now the health department's going to come in and inspect houses because there's concern about, an animal's sanitary dwelling condition. We start to get a little bit of field of what we're trying to accomplish here by trying to do everything with an ordinance. And I would be worried about, number one, having some kind of inane connection and authority for health department or investigation tracking back to an ordinance that was never intended for that. But then number two, like we had trouble getting our assessors, access to houses. People can turn them down. There is such a thing as private property. So setting the expectation in an ordinance that someone can't have, someone needs to maintain their animals in a public health approved manner in their private dwelling, it seems like we're pushing a little bit too hard when we should just focus on different ordinances and different bodies that are investigating threats to human life and, sanitary conditions as humans live, and maybe keep the animal regulating at least to the accessory dwelling units.
Alderwoman Kelly, and then Alderman Jettie.
I was going to respond similarly that my understanding of the way it was written previously was that they were trying to talk about accessory structures. So they say built or located within, this was the old ordinance, built or located within 45 feet of any building occupied by human beings. So I think the intent is still there with the accessory structure. That's what they were trying to get at.
Alderman Jettie.
In response, you think this is just talking about chickens because it's in a proposed ordinance that's called, something to the effect of let's allow people to have chickens in town. But this ordinance that it's amending, it's not just amending, it's just not providing for allowing chickens in the zoning law. This keeping and housing of animals is a separate ordinance. It's not in the zoning ordinance. It's elsewhere. And and when they were trying to in an effort to provide for in the zoning ordinance for the allowance of chickens, they also looked at looked at what else might be affected by this. And they came up with this keeping and housing animals as being something that needed to be changed in order to accommodate the chickens. And I just the original
Is your objection?
Alderman Lopez, excuse me, would you let Alderman Jettie finish?
I'm not sure I understand what he's saying.
yeah, so I'll go ahead and ask what.
Okay, Alderman Lopez.
So is the change to animals coming from the zoning board? Is that what you were saying?
No, this change is coming from, was initiated by Director Marchand in an effort to try to allow chickens to be kept by people in the city, more people other than the people in the 30 and 40, R30 and R40 zone. So, she initiated this, and as part of the ordinance, she and the legal department, saw that there were other ordinances besides the zoning ordinance that talked about animals, and so they included that to allow the chickens. And I just noticed that in doing so, the original proposal was, except for chickens, it shall be unlawful for any person to keep and house any animal in a structure built or located within 45 feet of any building occupied by human beings. And I just noticed that this, in effect, would allow people to have chickens in their house. Maybe. That's what I was trying to address.
Alderman Lopez.
Okay, so I was confused because I thought you were saying that the way you were phrasing it made it sound like the zoning board or some other entity was doing it. My understanding is that Director Marchand and Alderman Kelly were focusing on urban chickens, and that's why they titled it that way, and that's what the ordinance primarily was meant to address. But if I remember, you were the one who had some concerns about the definition of pets, animals, etc. And I think the changes were made to reflect that, if I'm correct.
If I may?
Yes, please, Alderman Jettie.
So instead of saying except for chickens, as defined in section 190-264, that was the original proposal. So they've struck that to say that it shall be unlawful for any person to keep and house any animal in any accessory structure in an unsanitary manner that presents an imminent hazard to public health. So they were trying to address my concern about an unintended consequence of allowing chickens in the main dwelling, because they're excluding chickens from the ordinance that says you can't keep animals in the structure. That's,
Director Marchant.
Just to clarify, that isn't actually why we updated it, because we didn't think this ever allowed for animals to be, chickens kept in the main structure. The point of the update was to, the old language, as you pointed out very correctly, was not being enforced anywhere in the city. That structures were not being required to be 45 feet away from homes. There's a 6-foot setback that is being enforced. And so we updated this to make sure that it was consistent for all animals across the city and in line with current practices and all the other zoning ordinances. I think that the legal department had a differing opinion of that this would have allowed chickens in the main dwelling unit. They'd read that differently. But the goal was to make sure that we are very clear now that we are talking about accessory structures and that we're talking about all animals being kept in a sanitary manner and not adding some kind of setback within this piece, because the setback is defined by zoning.
Alderman Lopez.
So the intent was to create a chicken ordinance, and we did our jobs here in the subcommittee and made observations about the definition of pets and how it was being enforced in the city. And as a result, we brought back the the updated version, which now talks about animals. And so going back to my original comment, there's also the unintended impact of continually trying to make things better and perfect. If we keep trying to push for word purity and make sure that now we also include the dwelling and the definition of animals and their sanitary safe conditions in the main dwelling, I'm a little bit concerned about how that would be received by the public and how it would even be implemented in a way that respects a person's home and right to property. So while I guess it's possible someone might keep a chicken in their house, I think we've done a lot with this ordinance, and there's a point where we have to say, okay, well, we can't just leave this suspended in midair forever. And if we do encounter actual tangible problems, we can come back to it. But if we continue to circle around it, I mean, the year's ending. We're gonna have to start all over again next year.
I don't think that's true, but
Alderwoman Kelly and then Alderman Jettie. Alderwoman Kelly.
I just wanted to respond to Alderman Lopez. I think that we did go back, we did make it better. There are more details about what happens if a chicken at large is seized, how you get them, what the fees, how we rectify it to make sure that you're within the ordinance to get your chickens back, and what happens if you don't. So I think that that's in here, and that's really important. And I also wanted to address something that Alderman Tenza had asked at the last meeting. I think having a wrap up in a year, see where we're at. Happy to have a report and discuss how it's gone that year. I think that would be really great for us to just come back to, because I know that a lot of people have come forward, talked about it, been really interested in. So I think saying yes in 1 year, we'll sit down and we'll talk about this and see how it's going and make better. If we need to make better, is the right way to approach this.
Alderman Jettie and then Alderman Tenza.
am I right? Alderman Lopez, you've been an alderman longer than I have. And
Barely.
so, but I don't think that the term ends this calendar year. I think legislation can continue. I don't think the term ends until next year. It's a 2-year term. Am I wrong about that?
Right.
Am I wrong or right?
This legislation we're 18, this legislation will continue. Yes, yes.
Okay, so that
I'm
was part of my
thinking
concern,
the
is because
dates, yeah.
I didn't want to have to reintroduce
Yes.
this to the board fresh, because we've been working on this for quite a while now. And I don't want to continue to have it floating around while we try to refine every possible impact of it, when we don't know that most of these things are even going to happen. I mean, I don't know people who keep chickens in their house.
Well, and I would just point out, as Director Marchant stated, there are other mechanisms for dealing with unsanitary conditions in a single-family dwelling or within an apartment. And I think all of us know of cases of people hoarding animals in apartments or in their homes, or not maintaining them, and have heard some of the problems with animals being unsheltered and whatever. And so there are other mechanisms in the city for that. And we just need to remember that those are in place also. And Alderman Tenza, and then Alderman Jettie, did you want to follow up? Or?
I appreciate what you're saying, and that's probably true, that there are other mechanisms for dealing with this, but we have, Alderman Lopez saying that people's homes are, their castles, so to speak, and that no one can go in and tell them what to do with their animals. And I hear what you're saying about there are other laws, and what Director Marchand is saying, but no one has pointed those out to me yet. And I've we've had the discussion, and again, I apologize for not pushing to get answers, but no one has pointed out to me, at least, that, yeah, there's this other law, here it is, here's the citation that prohibits people from keeping chickens or any other animals in their house, or allowing them to keep cats and dogs and stuff. That's just something I'm unclear about, and I don't, I'm, I cannot, go ahead and just assume that those things are not a problem if I think they're a problem, and there's something that we can do about it as we're doing this. But that's how I think about it, and other people think differently. I understand that.
Okay. Alderman Tenza, and then Alderman Lopez.
Thank you. So we were at last meeting, I had a couple different proposals that I talked about, and I will just bring up again tonight. The first of which is kind of easing into this, allowing more chickens in certain neighborhoods by limiting the folks who can have them, at least initially, to half-acre lots. I've always maintained that we allow people in our 30 and our 40 zones to have chickens because those lots are bigger. There's more room. There's less of a potential for a nuisance with neighbors, and so it's still 1,800 homes that would be allowed. We would be expanding to allow for people to have chickens, and maybe I'm just more of a half glass full kind of guy, but that's we're creating that if we say that half-acre lots are acceptable, and then we can see what the data tells us. Do 10 people come forward, or do 1,800 people come forward and have and want chickens on their lot? So since I've sat in every meeting that this has come up in, I'm going to make a motion just to amend on page 2, section C2, where it says up to 6 adult chickens may be kept on a lot of at least half acre or more, to that paragraph.
So your motion is to amend this to kept on a lot of a half acre or more. You've heard the motion. Discussion.
Okay, just for clarification, where is that again?
On page 2C, standards, keeping of chickens standards, item number 2 under there, up to 6 adult chickens may be kept on a lot. Only female chickens are allowed, on a lot of a half acre or more. I'm sorry. So the end of the first sentence, is that correct?
Yes. And then, I mean, I think this, this is not the last change, the first change that we're ever going to make. If it works out well and we can expand it from here later on, and there haven't been any issues or no big issues and people are more comfortable with it, I think we can expand it later on down the line. So it's not the end of it.
Discussion? Alderwoman Kelly?
I appreciate your concerns around this. If you're worried about it having a nuisance, I would be more behind reducing the number of chickens than reducing the lot size, because I think the lot size really does make it so small that we're not going to have enough. And I said this last time, we're not going to have enough data to know if it even was really working, because we're going from 20,000 to 2,000 people. And I think we've all in this chamber talked about, it's not something, and even you said, it's not something that everybody in Nashua is going to go out and do. It's a pretty heavy cost of entry in terms of doing this. So
Other comments? Alderman Laws and then Alderman Jettie.
I hate to play Sweden here, guys. And I know you're gonna want to kill me for this, Shoshana, but I gotta support Tenza here, and I think that your logic. Yeah, I feel like the smaller sample size you have, you're also limiting the potential number of complaints you're going to get, and so it might actually work out to your benefit if we rolled this out in phases, because if you've only got 1,800 homes using it, and out of that number, I mean, I've gotten a lot of support from the public about the chicken ordinance, but I question how many of those people are actually going to have chickens, Like, they just like the idea of being able to have chickens. I think that we should do what Tens is suggesting and do the quarter-acre lot for a year, see how it goes, and I imagine we're probably not going to have much data at all, because people probably aren't going to be doing that much of it. And then if it works out, we can revisit it.
Just
Sorry.
clarification, quarter acre or half acre?
My amendment was for a half acre.
Half acre.
Oh. That's the blue map.
Alderman Jettie and then Alderman Kelly.
Is the half acre the blue or the red or the purple?
It's the blue.
Blue.
The blue. So the purple would not be allowed to have chickens.
Correct.
So everything that's white stays white. Everything that's purple goes to white, and blue is what you're looking at for being allowed that currently is not allowed. Is that correct? So there are some white areas in the outer portions of the city that have the larger lots that already are allowed, but these purple areas would turn to white, so they would not be allowed.
Could you scroll down so we can see what the southern half
So
of the
we can
city-
see all of the wards. So that's what,
so we can
and
And Madam
this is-
Chair, if I could,
there's northeastern, I'm sorry?
if I could just also
Oh, sorry.
clarify, I think another kind of difficult thing about the map is just some of these areas that are white are either not residential, like you can see Northeastern Boulevard, which is a commercial area. So, it's not a huge part of the map that chickens wouldn't be allowed in anyways.
Right.
Um,
Or Sky Meadow,
Right.
or
any of the,
apartment complexes, right?
Right.
Alderman Jettie,
Or they're already allowed.
right.
Right.
Right, I mean, as you look, let's see, here's Spitbrook. So this white area, although it's white, these are all apartments and multi-family dwellings. So they're not allowed there. And certainly all of this is DW and the Flatley properties. So, again, the motion to amend to half-acre lots would remove the option for chickens
and all the purple.
for all of the lots that are currently in purple.
Correct.
And, Madam Chair,
Alderman Laws.
if we don't amend, there's no restriction on the land size at all.
Correct. It's the housing restriction and the setbacks. Alderwoman Kelly.
Yeah, so I was going to say that I think when we originally talked, and I brought this up a lot, is talking about social equity, right? So if you have a half-acre lot, you have a certain type of house and a certain background. So we really thought about, can we allow people who don't have the space that Dave Tenza is recommending to still access this? And the way we did it was we gave, so you have your setback, it has to be in your side lot or your back lot, and you have to give a minimum of 10 square feet of floor space per chicken in order to do that. So that it restricts it, it just doesn't restrict it by acreage. if that
And
makes
I would
sense.
clarify, that is floor space in an accessory structure, not in your house.
Correct. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, Alderman Laws.
Do we have data on how many lots that are less than a quarter acre that'll qualify?
I have not run those numbers. I can.
And I guess when we start looking at lots less than a quarter of acre, when we put in the criteria that they qualify, and I guess for any of the lots that would qualify, looking at the number of dwellings on those lots also.
Correct.
So it's like two things. It's the size as well as the number of units
Yeah.
on the lot.
The analysis that was done here does not subtract multifamily lots necessarily. And so this is only allowed on single and duplex lots. But if we did the math backwards, which would still include those four, we have a lot of like 4-unit houses and things. If we went down to about 1,800, then we would have, approximately 16,000 lots. Yeah, that would qualify.
16,000,
Right, but some of those are certainly multifamily.
right,
Has not been subtracted out of that. Yeah.
right. Alderwoman Kelly and then
Actually, a question
Alderman
for you,
Lopez.
in
I'm
terms of
sorry?
clarifying. I was just wondering if she ran the numbers, how would you be able to determine if they have the side/back lot? I think it's going to be more in practice than necessarily saying like they might have a lot that's got the space, but they only have it in the front yard. So we wouldn't be able to necessarily calculate that. Is that correct?
I would not be able to calculate that. That would be a much more significant analysis that we don't have the time to.
Alderman Lopez and Alderman Laws.
So I'm not really a voting member of the committee, but I ultimately do get my say at the Board of Aldermen, and I can't stop talking here. So it's the urban chicken ordinance, not the suburban. And I think the more we cut out, the more we defeat the purpose of the ordinance. I mean, sure, we could put a couple more places and allow a couple more chickens in the city of Nashua, but we haven't heard, and as Alderman Laws has pointed out, an abundance of people who are super passionate about actually having chickens. What we've been hearing from people is they're tolerant of them and they like the idea and they would be supportive of the concept. So I don't think we have a stampede of people who are likely to purchase chickens, implement this poorly, generate all the complaints that are being planned around here. I think again, we can try it and see if it works, and if it doesn't work, we can always amend it, but there's no evidence, practically speaking, to suggest that there's going to be an abundance of complaints or concerns regarding this.
Alderman Laws.
And you're gonna have to forgive me. For some reason, I had the quarter acre thing in my head when I was backing up Alderman Tenza, and I'd be willing to do it. I'd be willing to compromise the
He's a
quarter acre.
flip-flopper. What's going on here?
But I tell you, I mean, if you're
Alderman
gonna do
Laws.
it, you might as well do it so enough people, enough people can take advantage of it. And I also, to what you were saying earlier, I think it gives the people who are going to be in charge of regulating this an opportunity to get their feet wet with the whole chicken thing before we roll it out citywide and make it so people all over the city can have it. Because I mean, there's going to be a learning curve of dealing with this,
Alderwoman Kelly.
Again, I'm going to ask you a question. I know that when we originally did this, we looked at the other cities that have done this, and I know you reached out to some of them. I I believe it's Concord does have the quarter acre, but the other cities do not. So I know that and one of the things that's really helped me is Miss Director Marchand would be the person who would be handling this. And she's very much been helpful, done the research, talked to other cities that have done this, and is still very much, for having this happen.
I believe Dover has has a lot size restriction with it, and I'm not and I think there were several others, but I can't recall off the top of my head at this moment. Yes.
Just as a follow-up, and then Alderman Tenza, do you remember what the lot size restriction was?
I'm sorry, I don't.
No, that's
yeah.
okay, and I'm trying to remember it also. Alderman Tenza.
And so the half acre lot size is similar to what Manchester has. And I believe if you have a lot size that's less than a half acre and you want chickens, you can still apply for
A waiver.
some
or-
some
yeah.
kind of waiver, and then it's up to the planning board or somebody to approve that waiver.
Yeah, it would go to zoning, correct? Director, if there
If
were
you were outside of this, it would be a variance.
a variance, right?
That would be how. Yes, you'd have to get a variance because it's outside of that.
Alderwoman Kelly and then Alderman Lopez.
Just a point of order, Manchester's only a quarter acre, not a half.
Okay. Alderman Lopez?
I just wanted to add, I mean, Manchester isn't exactly known for its inner city chickens, so it's a nearby city with a similar rule, but if what we're trying to accomplish is a social equity thing here, we might have to pilot it a little bit here.
Alderman Tenza?
So I just want to point out with the whole issue of social equity. I mean, we're not allowing folks who live in multifamily apartment buildings to have them. We're not allowing, even 3-family homes. So we are already limiting who can keep them, even, regardless if you're in a 3-family home and there's you have a whole acre under this ordinance, you're not allowed to keep 6 chickens. So it's, I understand that some people want to expand it, but expanding it also means that the city's got to regulate it. And the whole point behind having this ordinance is a realization that this could be a nuisance, which is why we're trying to regulate it. I've made my points. I think everyone understands my position on this.
Anything
So-
else?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman Lopez?
I take the point as presented, but I also say that even though I'm only like 2 years longer in alderman, it's very similar to the argument that was being made last night, where somebody's going to be unhappy, so why do anything? Like, I get that it's not going to be fully socially equitable, and it may be that there's really not a good reason to have a chicken in an apartment. So there's definitely going to have to be a line somewhere. I just think improving it for the ones within this plan, I see no evidence to suggest that it would fail. And while it might be a nuisance for some, there's plenty of nuisances to happen right now, and there's no reason. I don't think this will cause more harm than good. So I'm still in favor of it. Ultimately, I think I would accept any step towards allowing more people the freedom to raise a chicken. It's New Hampshire. It's live free or die. Like, raise your chicken. But I would just prefer that the most people have the option to decide how to do it, unless we had a reason to believe it wouldn't work.
Other thoughts, comments? I see people studying the map.
Would you like to look at this map? This one's green instead of blue.
How do we move those colors around, right?
Yeah, well, it's always easier to give something to someone than it is to take it away. So my concern, I'm not as concerned as Alderman Tenza, but I am concerned that if we just roll it out and then we realize that the problem isn't so much, anything other than people living in more densely populated areas annoying their neighbors, it's going to be tough to go there and be like, all right, well, you just invested all this money into a chicken coop and chickens and all the time in raising them, but sorry, you don't qualify anymore because we had to amend the ordinance. Like, that's my only concern right now. I just don't want to do that to people.
Alderman Kelly and then Alderman Jettie.
Yeah, so the people who are allowed under, if we pass this ordinance, would be grandfathered in. So if we decided to change it in a year, in 2 years, they would not be told they had to get rid of their chickens.
And I would just offer up as an example, prior, in the last term, we passed the accessory dwelling legislation, and after that was passed, there were concerns raised about how that was being implemented, and new legislation was introduced, and we made changes in that. People who had already been given permission to have an accessory dwelling were allowed to keep that. No one said you have to dismantle that. But no new requests under the original standards were being granted. So we've done that. Alderman Lopez? Oh, I'm sorry, Alderman Jettie. And
I
and
just
then
wanted to
Alderman
make
Lopez.
the same point that once, as far as the zoning laws are concerned, once we say you can have chickens, whatever, whether it's a half acre or quarter acre or no acreage, once the people get chickens and put in a chicken coop in accordance with that ordinance, if we change it afterwards, those people have what's called a non-conforming use, and they cannot, I don't know, I don't know what happens, whether they can, they can keep the chicken coop, whether they can replace the chickens after they die or not. I don't, yes, so,
It's based on the accessory use, sorry, to jump in.
Yes.
So it's based on the structure. If the structure was removed for more than a year, then they would not be allowed to bring it back unless it was destroyed by acts of God or something like that. So it would be the actual structure, not the chickens being gone for that long, that would make them no longer acceptable non-conforming, where they'd have to comply with the current ordinance.
so the reverse of that is that, if once you allow the chickens, you can't remove them.
Alderman Lopez?
I was kind of looking at that from the other direction, like how long does a chicken live? Did anybody actually come across that? Because I mean, if we ultimately had to walk this back and just prohibited the purchase of chickens within certain areas or whatever, like live chickens, then I mean, I guess they could lovingly care for their chicken for like 12, 13 years. We don't have to go in and seize the chicken, I don't think. And there's no rooster, so it's not like they can continue to run a farm.
I think we as a city have the ability to regulate uses, structures. I don't think we have any ability to regulate somebody's ability to purchase a chicken. I think that would be a very difficult way to go.
Yeah, my understanding would be that if we were to walk this back and someone had already built a coop and had chickens, if in 5 years that first round of chickens, they all died, they would still be able to continue to have chickens. My question is, if the property is sold, does the use stay or go away?
It stays.
It stays. Okay, that's what I
It's the
also thought.
structure.
Right,
So whatever else you renovate, leave the chicken coop.
right.
A good example might be some signs around town. Signs are very similar in that if you have a huge sign, you'll see an example is on Bedford 101A. That's now Murphy's Tap Room. They kept that old weather vane sign even though the use went away because they knew that they could never have the same sign structure again, and that was very valuable. So you see a lot that you can change the fascia of a sign, but if the structure's there, it's grandfathered. And so this would be somewhat similar.
Okay. So the motion is to amend, and it is under C standards, number 2, up to 6 adult chickens may be kept on a lot, and the amendment is to add of 100 or 1/2 acre or more. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Okay, and that motion fails. Any other, Alderman Tenza?
Madam Chair, I just have one more amendment to propose quickly. And again, this is what other communities do. They allow for a larger setback than what we would allow for in this ordinance. And so it would be on the third page, paragraph 8 here. It says the coop in any run must be located in side or rear yards. I would strike and must comply with setbacks of the zone and insert there, it cannot be located within 30 feet of an abutter's property line.
Okay, so you've heard the motion to amend. It is under C standards. Number 8, the coop and any run must be located inside or rear yards and must comply with the setbacks of the zone, striking of the zone and adding within 30 feet.
It cannot be located within 30 feet.
Discussion
Setback.
of the property line.
Thank you.
So your amendment would strike, must comply with the setbacks of the zone and replace it with cannot be located within 30 feet of the property line.
Yes.
Okay.
For
And that would be
clarification, what will paragraph 8, how will that read now?
Okay, and if I may just clarify, you're talking about side and rear property lines?
Yes.
Okay, so the coop and any run must be located in side or rear yards and cannot be located within 30 feet of the side or rear property lines. Is that correct? Alderman Tenza?
So I don't think, well, I think that the first part of the sentence can stay the same.
Okay,
But then the last section of it would read, cannot be located within 30 feet of an abutter's property line.
okay, so you're striking though must comply with the setbacks of the zone
Yes.
and replacing it, okay.
Because as I understand the setbacks of the zone, it would only be 6 or 8 feet, something like that.
Correct.
Okay. Alderman Jettie, I think you had another question, and then,
So, just for clarification, how is it going to read? If your amendment passes, can you read paragraph 8 to me?
Sure. The coop and run must be located in side or rear yards and cannot be located within 30 feet of an abutter's property line.
Alderman Kelly, or Alderwoman Kelly, I'm sorry.
Yeah. This is actually something that I've heard some feedback. The woman who came to the planning board was talking about that. So I'm not against changing this. I would recommend that we kind of fall in line with the other cities. They do 20 feet in both Manchester and Dover. So if you're amenable to that, I think that would, follow what's been done and still allow for a little bit more room between people in their chicken coops.
I think Concord does 30 feet, but I think certainly anything more than, what it currently would be somewhat of a, well, it would be an improvement.
Okay.
So it can't be on your neighbor's property line because the neighbor might not want chickens there.
That close. So, would you,
House next to you to go up for sale.
would you, do you want to amend this? Do you want to change this to 20? Are you,
I'm fine changing it to 20. if
20?
That's what the committee is in favor of.
okay, so it would now read, and cannot be located within 20 feet of the property, the abutter's property lines.
You could just say of property lines. It doesn't have to have the abutter.
Yeah. Any comments, thoughts? Okay, so you've all heard the amendment. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? So that amendment carries. So number 8 will read, "The coop and any run must be located in side or rear yards and cannot be located within 20 feet of the property lines." Any other thoughts, comments?
Are you done?
I guess that's a comment.
A question,
Yes, Alderman Jettie.
does does the ordinance say, I know it says, the keeping of chickens shall be accessory to and on the premises of a single-family or two-family detached dwelling and shall be for personal use only. Does it, do you, I'm not sure that that says, you know, the keeping of chickens shall be accessory to doesn't mean, at least as I read it, that the chickens have to be located in an accessory building or a separate building. Does it say that anywhere here, or do you think it does?
I think what the purpose behind making that is we didn't want there to be a vacant lot that had chickens, that it can't be the primary use.
Right?
As far as whether you could keep chickens in your own house, I don't think that's regulated by this ordinance. This ordinance is specifically regulating the accessory structures that are required to be able to keep chickens.
Okay. So, would it be possible to clarify that, you know, that we're talking about keeping these chickens in an accessory building, a separate building? I think that's the intent, but I'm not sure that it's, it clearly says that.
I don't think that somebody would be coming to us for a permit for the accessory structure. If somebody was to keep chickens in their own house and is not building a structure for them, they wouldn't be coming to us for a permit. And that's what this is regulating.
So, and you probably all think I'm crazy, but I'm just thinking that somebody can comply with this by building a chicken, you know, a coop, a cage inside their house and keep the chickens in there. And I don't,
But
I don't think that's what we want to do.
I think the point Director Marchant is making is that if they do that, they're not putting a structure on their property. And this is about a structure that they would be coming, like a shed. Okay, so it's the same sort of thing, only this is a structure on their property for the keeping of chickens. Someone could very easily decide to keep chickens in their basement and we would never know about it because they're not coming to us for a permit to do that. So it's kind of implied. And then further on, it does speak about an accessory structure in the keeping and housing of animals. That piece that's been changed, it talks about house any animal in an accessory structure. So under, again, the keeping and housing of animals, Director Marchant, and then, or
Either one of us can talk to it.
If you flip the page, number 6, to the top of the next page, a coop must be provided for chickens. And then if you look at that with number 8, the coop has to be located in a side or rear yard. So I think that clarifies that you have to have one and it has to be outside of the structure.
And Madam Chair.
yes,
The
And then-
point that I was going to make too, I think, is one of the things that's come up, and it's having chickens in your home is not good for your health. And so one of the things we had talked about when people come for the permit, which really helps us, is we can give them some information on the proper use and the proper care of chickens.
Right,
I believe you had UNH handouts that we were talking about
Yes.
passing out.
right, yep. Alderman Lopez?
So in combination with those, number 2C5 says that it can't be, the chickens need to be in non-daylight hours in the coop. So, I mean, I guess somebody could bring it in to watch TV with it, but who cares? Like, you still have to live in the coop.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I'm talking about people keeping the coop inside their house, you know, and, you know, I don't know.
Building a structure in their house?
Yes,
Okay.
you know, like a cage, you know, and I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you all think that that's fine and dandy. Maybe it is. I just don't, there's just something about that that doesn't strike me as being correct, that it sounds unsanitary to me. It sounds like it would be a violation of, you know, of health standards, and it just doesn't seem to be in the best interest of the city to allow people to do that. So that's my thought on it.
So, Alderwoman,
You're probably going to make the same point I was going to make. I just would ask to you, what about 8 does not cover that? It says the coop and any run must be located in inside or rear yards. That clearly says you can't have it in your home. It has to be outside in the yard.
I understand that it can be read that way, and maybe it is. Maybe that does cover it. We just have to be careful not to assume that a judge is going to read these things and make all of the assumptions that you're making, and think of all of the reasonable ways that this could be done. You know, Alderman Tenzer and I deal with judges every day, and I've heard it many, many times that they presume the legislature or the Board of Aldermen, when they use words, they mean the words to say what they say. And you cannot, judges won't assume that it says something different than what it says. So they look at the plain meaning, and they say, you know, if the legislature or the Board of Aldermen meant to say something else, they should have said it. And I'm just trying to, you know, make it clear. You know, I don't think we just should pass stuff and just to get it passed. I think if we're going to do it, if our intention is to allow chickens, then I think we ought to craft the best ordinance we can to accomplish that purpose. And maybe you have. I'm just pointing out things that I see as I read this that I think are problematic. Maybe I'm wrong.
Alderman Wilshire?
I had an experience with an apartment that I was managing. I had a couple from Vietnam who took the cabinet doors off their kitchen cabinets and put chicken wire up and raised chickens in their kitchen. So it does happen. I mean, I support this ordinance, but I don't know how we can keep that from happening. People are going to do what they want to do in their homes. I mean, it's not sanitary. They were made to take them down. The health officer went in and made them take the chickens out and put the cabinet doors back up. But it's going to happen. It's not going to be rampant, I don't believe.
Director Marshall?
I think we absolutely have the ability to regulate that already. If it's unsanitary, the health officer has the permission under the health officer's RSA, which is 128, I believe, by state law, that allows them to enter a premise and deal with unsanitary conditions. And there's an example of when they did just that. That is not what this ordinance is attempting to regulate.
Right.
I'm just wondering, and I'm throwing this out there, if the wording doesn't make sense, I'm fine with that. Under 3, C3, if we were to say the keeping of chickens shall be in an accessory structure, coop, on the premises of a single-family or two-family detached dwelling. Could we add that to, I mean, I know you're talking really
Yep.
about the use that it's, the keeping of chickens is a secondary use to
Correct.
living in the dwelling. And I understand that. But do we want to add accessory to, and add something about in an accessory dwelling or coop or detached? Your thoughts? I'm just tossing it
Yes,
out there.
I mean, I agree with you. I think this is saying it's accessory use, so that
Right.
can't be the primary use on the property. I think that if you wanted to say the keeping of chickens shall be accessory to, in an accessory structure and on the premise of a single-family or two-family attached dwelling, you could add that. But yes.
Okay, so I'm just, the keeping of chickens shall be accessory to and on the premises of a single family or two-family detached dwelling in an accessory structure or coop and for personal use only?
Yep.
Okay, so the keeping of so this is, I'm going to propose this amendment. The keeping of chickens shall be accessory to and on the premises of a single-family or two-family detached dwelling and in an accessory structure, coop, and for personal use only. And I am willing to take all sorts of changes for that. Does that help, Alderman Jettie? Do you think that helps?
Yes.
And my concern is that, we don't mix use and structure, so trying to clarify that within that. Okay, so you've heard the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we will amend C3 with that language. Any other thoughts, comments? Director, or Alderman Wilshire, I just
Thank you.
promoted you.
The chickens that are allowed now in the R30 zone, this doesn't affect them at all.
It does not.
Nothing will change with them.
Correct.
Okay.
Alderman Lopez?
So can they build chicken coops in their living room or no? I'm making a joke, but honestly, there's other ordinances and procedures to address that.
Any other comments? Seeing none, the motion by Alderman Schmidt was to,
For final passage, but we'll have to.
as amended?
As amended.
Okay, so the motion by Alderman Schmidt is to recommend final passage as amended. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay, that motion carries. Public comment, I see none. Remarks by Alderman? Alderman Lopez?
Tomorrow night at Riverwalk, there's a charity concert by Best Not Broken. It's at 6:45 at Riverwalk Cafe, if anybody's interested in going.
Thank you. Any other remarks? There is No need for a non-public session. Do I have a motion? Alderman Tenza,
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed, and we are adjourned at 9:10. Thank you very much.
Calendar.